Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first global social media conversation with the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. I'm Juju Cheng, and I'm honored and delighted to be here just a few days before world leaders gather for the annual UN General Assembly to put your questions to the Secretary General. And we're going to go through Facebook, live stream, Twitter, and the UN webcast page. We're also being simultaneously interpreted into Chinese to be shown on Weibo. Over the past few weeks, we've given people around the world the opportunity to send in questions about the United Nations and about the Secretary General specifically. And it's not too late to send in your questions because we'll be taking some live during our broadcast. But before we begin, I want to share with you a short video showing us what it's actually like to be the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Change the world today. I turn the sky to blue from gray. Take away the hurt I see. Make sure that we live irate.
I would never be alone, and we would never do no wrong. Everyone would get along if I could change. I change the fact that life is way too short. If I could change,
now change the way that we just don't love before.
So clearly it's not easy being the world's top diplomat. Welcome to the conversation, Secretary Ban Ki-moon.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to see you and participate in global conversation with you.
Well, I appreciate your being here. And as you know, we're going to be live streamed on Facebook and across social networks, so we're very excited to be here today.
It's a great pleasure again. Thank you very much. I'd like to express my thanks to everybody who is now taking part in this. As you know, world leaders are heading to the United Nations for our General Assembly next week. This will be the busiest week and the month for me. Now, I'd like to have this opportunity to discuss with you on all the matters which you may have questions. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask me. You may tweet, you may text, you may invite your friends to join us.
Absolutely. And, you know, we did put out an all-call using social media, and so this has become thousands and thousands of questions which have poured in the past few weeks. And I'm going to ask you some of what we heard over and over again, and the phrasing might be a little bit different, but many of the questions hit the same point. So here we go. Are you ready? The first question is from Serge Lawrence, who wrote to us in Spanish on Twitter, and he asked, when is the UN going to be reformed? When will there be a UN that really matches today's world needs? It's a very pointed question.
Very important, very big questions. Of course, I know that when United Nations is composed of 193 member states, coming with all different backgrounds and perspectives and ideas, it takes sometimes a long time to make a decision. That is why we believe that there are some areas for us to improve how United Nations can better serve the interests and needs of billions of people around the world. We are feeding at least 100 million people a day. We are taking care of 35 million refugees around the world. And to fight against the climate change, we are planting 1 billion trees a year. Then, of course, for children's health, we vaccine 40% of our children. All these are some which we do every day. I have some good card which I can show you. This is every day what United Nations does. I cannot repeat all. Peace and security is also very important. We are maintaining 120,000 soldiers around the world, wherever, whenever there are conflicts. We have 15 missions, such missions around the world now. Then to make this organization more effective and efficient, is our great challenge and great target as a Secretary General. We've been trying to make this organization much more mobile and efficient and accountable and transparent.
You have so many priorities and so many different issues to tackle globally. I want to get to our next question, which comes from China, actually. More than 50% of the social media questions came from Weibo. And here's one from Maggie Zhang, who asks, the food produced every year is abundant enough to feed all the populations of the world, but why are there so many people in Africa who die of hunger each year? Which is such a compelling question.
That's a very thoughtful question, Maggie. I think it's true that we have at least 1 billion people who are starving from abject poverty. They go hungry, they go to bed hungry every night. That's very sad. But ironically, we have enough food all around the world. The question and problem is that they do not distribute it fairly. That's a social injustice that we have to address and stop. At the same time, there are many smallholder farmers who do not have a seed or fertilizer, or whose lands are affected by climate change, a long spell of drought, or flooding. All these kind of situation causes shortage of food, depending upon where you are living. That really makes a problem. That is why I have established a global task force where all the United Nations agencies and also World Bank and International Monetary Fund and OECD and African Development Bank are participating. I have convened 20 of such task force meetings during last 2.5 years to address this issue. We are providing good seeds resistant to weather and fertilizers, particularly to smallholder farmers. We are working very closely with the World Bank and other development banks.
Clearly that is to fight the poverty trap. And I want to move on to a slightly different issue, which has to do, as you say, with peace and security, which is such a priority for the UN. Another question comes in from Thilan Martin from France, and he asks, why does it take so much time to reach a decision here at the UN? It always seems that the civilians who are suffering on the front lines.
Protecting the lives of civilian population is our top priority. As United Nations consists of 193 member states, sometimes it takes time. There are very long decision-making process. That is what we are really trying to shorten and expedite deployment of peacekeeping soldiers. But that decision should be taken by the Security Council, a member state. Once a decision is made, we expedite the deployment of soldiers and provide the necessary equipment and train them. We have 120,000 soldiers around the world in 15 different conflict zones. They are protecting human lives. They are providing support for humanitarian workers who really are engaged in providing humanitarian assistance.
You've stepped up the response time for emergency relief.
Yes, we have a Central Emergency Response Fund. That is quite quick and efficient. Because of this long taking time, when there is a tsunami or natural disasters or earthquake, there's no time to raise money, and there is no time to discuss this matter at the United Nations General Assembly. Then in such case, I decide with my humanitarian coordinator, within 24 hours or maximum 48 hours, we send the humanitarian assistance to the disaster area.
Clearly, rapid response saves lives.
Yes, that is most effective and rapid response.
That's fantastic. Okay, thank you for that one, Secretary General. We have a lot of questions on this next subject. It's very hard-hitting. No easy questions on the social media. People are very concerned about corruption. Stéphane Belizer wrote to us from Canada to ask, Mr. Secretary General, how do you intend to fight corruption that plagues our states and destroys the well-being of our societies? And Christopher Snyder from the United States says he often hears about fraud within the United Nations itself, and he wants to know what's being done to stop it.
Corruption is the cancer of our society. We must stop and prevent this one. And I really hate corruption. When you are deserved to get something, then when your money or assistance are robbed, that's again injustice. That's a totally unacceptable, despicable. That is why United Nations has a UN Convention against corruption. That is the strongest tool which we have. We try to apply all throughout the world. We have what is known as a business UN compact. Through this, we try to ask business CEOs to run their business in a transparent and corruption-free manner. We are trying to talk to the world leaders to enhance their good governance. When there is a corruption in the institution, this undermines the development project, and it undermines all the aspects of our society. That is why UN places the highest priority to eradicate this corruption.
It's clearly a high priority for
Yes.
you. Ethical good practices are important.
At the same time, we also try to keep our work transparent.
Right.
Within a UN Secretariat. That is why I have established Ethics Office, and that is why we are strengthening oversight capacity.
Mm-hmm. Those are great initiatives internally here at the UN.
Yes.
Changing gears to a more practical question, we have one in Spanish over Twitter from R. Isabel Garcia from Colombia. She wants to know, how can someone find work here at the UN?
That's very good. We'd like to have many young people, men and women, join the United Nations. This is the place where you work for humanity. We have a very good program called the YPP, a Young Professional Program. Through this, we are welcoming qualified and very distinguished young people who are committed, who have a strong sense of mission to work for humanity.
You know, it'd be wonderful for everyone to come work at the United Nations, but clearly young people, perhaps because it's a social media conversation, a lot of the questions came from young people, and people wanted to know how you can get young people engaged in peacemaking. A specific question came in on Twitter from Casey Caravana from the Philippines, who writes, Mr. Secretary General, how can we, the youth, maintain peace and order in our simple ways?
Youth, they can be the leaders of tomorrow. But what have happened this year, I realized that they have already become leaders of today. Look at the situations in Arab and North Africa. There were many young people who really went out the street and asking for their legitimate right and their legitimate aspirations to the government leaders. And they were the initiators of this revolution.
And certainly young people are using social media.
Yes, they are using social media, tweeting and texting. By doing that, they have the power to mobilize this social force. Therefore, we are very much engaging with the youth. Youth will be one of the top priorities of my second term as a Secretary General, coming 5 years.
That's very gratifying to hear. We're moving on to a different issue, which is ongoing at the United Nations. We heard from a Palestinian woman over Twitter. Her name is Alia Al-Khozadar, who wants to know, what can the UN do in order to solve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict?
It's very sad that the Palestinian people have not been able to have their legitimate right to have their own state. I'm a strong supporter and committed supporter for this two-state vision, where Israel and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security, and by which, through negotiation, the Palestinians can have an independent, sovereign, and viable state. This is their dream and their aspiration, and I sincerely hope that there should be a negotiation immediately starting even now, so that this will give them their dreams.
Do you sense momentum in the region, especially in light of Arab
Unfortunately, at this time, the momentum has not created much. As a member of a quartet, I have been working very hard, and I have been addressing this issue with the leaders in the Arab and the leaders of other world, major world leaders. As General Assembly is going to begin soon, and I'm sure that the world leaders will come to the United Nations. I hope that this issue will be more seriously dealt with by world leaders.
We're going to change gears again and consider more of the social aspect of the social media conversation, because a lot of people wanted to know a bit more about your personal life. So this question comes from China. The question is, what was your dream when you were young? And what have been the keys to your success? And that question comes from Hao Bao Bao from China.
As you know, I'm a Korean. I come from once devastated by Korean War. Very poor, nothing to eat, nothing to do. I thought that when I was a young student, what should I do for my country? I thought that I should do for my country by becoming a public servant. Then, for me, very important opportunity came when I was a high school student. I was invited by American Red Cross, and I traveled around the United States for about a month, and finally I was given an opportunity of meeting President John F. Kennedy at the time in 1962.
Really?
That was a most inspiring moment for me. My eyes were open wide, and I thought at that time I'd better be a diplomat of Korea to work for the well-being and prosperity and stability of my country. That's what I have realized, and having served as Foreign Minister of the Republic of Korea, later I thought of doing some greater good as Secretary General of the United Nations. I'm very much honored to serve this great organization for peace, security, world development, and human rights as the Secretary General of the United Nations.
I happen to know that you're a very active and devoted grandfather. We have another question from China, from the social media network Weibo. It's from Wang Yung Ting, who asks, you are quite busy all day long, so what do you do after work?
I do not have much time.
I bet that's an understatement.
Because I spend almost 17 to 19, 20 hours working.
A day.
I have a very limited time, 5 hours, sometimes 4 hours. Then I really try to have some dialogue with my family, particularly with my grandchildren. They are adorable, and they really give me inspiration and great energy whenever I talk and meet with the grandchildren.
My hat is off to your hardworking and long-suffering wife, Mrs. Bunn, as well. One of the major symbols of the United Nations I'm wearing today is the light blue helmets. In light of some of the recent controversy involving peacekeeping troops, what's your view of their position now throughout the world?
Unfortunately, we have experienced so many conflicts around the world, particularly in conflict areas in developing world, the Middle East and Africa, or Latin America, in the Asian countries, all the places. I've been urging world leaders to look at the broader picture of world peace. they without minding their local issues, if they look at the broader national and regional and the global issues, then they can be more flexible. They can give in and they can compromise all their problems. Unfortunately, the reality on the ground has not been so. That is why we are keeping all these peacekeepers, keeping all these warring partners apart and monitoring the elections and trying to provide the humanitarian assistance, trying to protect the lives and human rights of women and the girls and children. They are the most vulnerable group of people when it comes to a conflict zone. So UN places the highest priority in saving protecting human lives, particularly a vulnerable group like women and girls.
There's so much important work that peacekeepers do, but I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the conduct as well in terms of the zero tolerance policy that you feel very strongly about.
I have made it zero tolerance, no sexual violence, no sexual discriminations, and I have launched a campaign called Unite to End Violence Against Women. And this is widely supported and widely implemented now.
That's fantastic. All right, we're going to go to a live question. While we've been talking, a lot of questions have been coming in. One came in on Twitter from Jennifer Shell in Venezuela, who asks, what is necessary to achieve greater gender equality, and could you talk about women who bear the brunt of the violence in armed conflict, which is very relevant to what you were just saying. And I happen to be here to witness your launch of UN Women, which is a very important initiative for you.
This is a very important issue for world peace and development and human rights and for all humanity. We have been using all these necessary resources, but least utilized resources is women now. We have 7 billion people, half of them are women. Therefore, if not more, women should be given at least the equal right. That is our philosophical commitment and political commitment. United Nations this year, January this year, established UN Women. This is a super agency dealing with the women's gender empowerment and gender equality. This is a quite important achievement which we have made. We have tried to lead by example. I have been doubling the number of senior women position holders in the UN Secretariat.
And I know Michelle Bachelet, who's the former president of Chile, was installed.
Michelle Bachelet, who was the former president of Chile, is now leading the UN Women. And another area of this the gender equality is to protect the women from sexual violence. As I said, I have initiated many campaigns, Unite to End Violence Against Women. Unfortunately, many women's human rights are abused in conflict area. And I have been urging them to establish zero tolerance policies, and many countries are responding very positively to this campaign.
That's great. Well, we have more live questions coming in. We even put out questions on abcnews.com. One just came in from Barb's Steffens on Facebook to the UN. She asks, with regards to the Millennium Development Goals, don't you think they should be reviewed? As since they were put in place, a lot of time has gone by, other problems have arisen, and there are just as important that definitely need to be addressed.
Millennium Development Goal is a blueprint adopted by the world's leaders in 2000 with a target date 2015 to reduce by half the number of abject poverty and to promote gender equality, to provide the primary education to many millions and millions of children, and to eliminate HIV/AIDS. All these 8 very important pillars. Now we have only 4 years left. Whether it can be achieved or not, there have been a lot of discussions. But now, still now, I believe that with a strong political will and commitment, with the reasonable financial support, it can be achievable. Now, United Nations has asked me to come out with a proposal by 2013 that what should be done post 2015. Suppose even though we admit that we will be 100% implementing this MDG, it will mean that half will be done of our target, because we are aiming to cut by half the number of poverty by 2015. There are many other issues still to be done. Climate change still we have to do. So we are now seriously reviewing and trying to think about the post-2015. So this is a part of review. Every year I have to report to the General Assembly.
You have many things on your to-do list, for sure, and priorities are so important. We have a question coming in from Africa as well, about Africa. Carrie Dimmer of South Africa tweeted, what's it going to take for African countries to lift themselves from the negatives of corruption, conflict, poverty, and other social ills? It's a big question.
Often Africa is known as they have so many problems. It may be true. But Africa is a continent of hope and potentiality. Therefore, we have to fully explore and cultivate this potentiality of Africa so that they can overcome the abject poverty, and they can overcome all these prevalent diseases. And also we can help them to overcome their political differences coming out of these conflicts. It needs help from outside world. MDG should be the most important political tool to help them overcome all these challenges. African challenge is #1 priority for me as a Secretary General of the United Nations. Without addressing African challenge at this time, you cannot claim that you have been successful.
Right, and famine and conflict are plaguing Somalia right now.
Somalia, it has been on our agenda a long time, at least 20 years. And it's very sad that in the area of the Horn of Africa, including Somalia, 12 million people are suffering from this humanitarian crisis. I sincerely hope that the international community will provide the generous humanitarian assistance to the people suffering from this poverty. And as far as this, when it comes to security situation is concerned, the transitional government has made good progress, and United Nations is doing our utmost efforts to provide the peace and security and development and humanitarian assistance.
As we've been chatting, the blogosphere has been going, and one of the people caught up in it is our famed chef from England, Jamie Oliver, known as the Naked Chef. And he asks, over 35 million people die of non-communicable diseases every year. How can we reduce this?
This is, again, totally unacceptable situation. People are dying slowly from these non-communicable diseases, which are all treatable and curable. That is why United Nations is convening the high-level summit meeting from next week at the General Assembly. This is for the first time in the history of the United Nations that we are having this high-level meeting, and we are paying high priority on preventing non-communicable diseases. This can be cured by medical support. This can be also prevented by simply changing your lifestyle, life behavior. This obesity or this diabetes and all this, you can change your lifestyle, drinking, the alcoholism or smoking. By stopping this, again, you can save your life.
Lifestyle diseases
Yes,
are very true. That's an issue that's dear to Jamie Oliver's heart. We have another question that's coming in from Brazil. Antonio Teixeira wants to know, does the UN see a link between climate change and the deterioration of basic conditions for decent living in the poorest regions of the world? It's a profound question.
My answer is resounding yes. It has very close relationship. Climate change is impacting every aspect of our life. That is why United Nations and I as a Secretary General have been taking this as a top of the global agenda during the last 5 years. We must have a globally binding agreement as soon as possible. It has a lot of impact to water scarcity, food security issues, and energies, and global health issues, and even all aspect of our life has been affected.
It's clearly a transnational issue, which is the hallmark of the United Nations. Transnational problems, I should suspect, require multinational solutions.
Yes, sure. This is a global challenge. Not a single country or group of country, however powerful, however resourceful they may be, they cannot do it. We have to have collective resources and collective power to address this global challenge. And United Nations is putting highest priority on sustainable development, including climate change, addressing food security, which we have discussed, water scarcity, gender empowerment. All these are interconnected.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of issues. As I say, your to-do list is very long. We want to give you an opportunity to express your final thoughts because we're coming into the final few minutes of our broadcast. But during this time, I want you to know that thousands of people have been listening in and contributing to the conversation. We hope to continue the conversation online afterwards. But for now, Mr. Secretary General, your closing thoughts.
I sincerely hope that even though our conversation has been brief, it has helped all of the viewers and listeners to understand more what United Nations is doing. United Nations is your United Nations. We are working very hard to meet the expectations of all billions of people around the world who need our help. I came from Korea, devastated by war. United Nations used to be a beacon of hope for us. They built our country and they fed our people. That's why I'm now able to serve as Secretary General. Then I really want to give same sense of hope. This a beacon. United Nations being the beacon of hope to all the people who really need, providing the humanitarian assistance, maintaining peace and security, and providing developmental assistance, and also protecting human rights so that everybody can live without any fear from hunger or threat and security. With everybody can live with a dignity, and United Nations is committed to work to make this world better for all.
Well, I know I'm far from alone in being grateful and able to sleep better at night knowing that all the women and men here at the United Nations are working to make the world a better place. I want to thank you for your time, Mr. Secretary General, and in an effort to keep us both connected and united, please be aware that this broadcast will also soon be available for on-demand access on the UN webcast page at the UN's 6 official languages. That's all we have time for today. Good luck at the General Assembly. I know you have a lot to put on your agenda and a lot to discuss, and I love that the United Nations is so hip with all the social media. So thanks so much for joining in this global conversation today.
Thank you. It has been a great pleasure and privilege for me to participate in global conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.